I'm about to explain to you multiple reasons why the future for Star Wars is incredibly bright. Let's break it down. So let's start with this. I know there are rumors out there that Star Wars is going to retcon the sequel trilogy and use time travel and Ezra Bridger to make it so the sequel trilogy never happened. That rumor is both dumb and incorrect. In fact, the truth is Star Wars and Lucasfilm are actually headed in an absolutely brilliant direction. There's a lot of reasons and evidence that we can point to that show that Lucasfilm is learning from past mistakes, making changes, and that the upcoming content for Star Wars is going to be dope and more universally loved by its fan base. In this video, I want to go over television, video games, and movies. I want to talk about the problems Lucasfilm has had with these different mediums so far, and what they have learned from their mistakes and how the future content is going to be different. And there's actual verifiable information and quotes from different big-time people involved in all of these different things that clearly point to them learning these lessons and things in the future being different. Now, I'm not going to be talking about merchandising here, but that's mostly because if they right the ship for the television, for the video games, and for the movies, the merchandising stuff should take care of itself. The merchandising stuff is really a side effect of the not great content that Disney has created for the different mediums. So let's start with television. Now, television was not a place where Lucasfilm actually had a lot of problems. There's not like a bunch of huge things that you can point to with regards to television, but it hasn't been perfect for them. They have had some issues. There's a big group of Star Wars fans that weren't exactly thrilled with Star Wars Rebels, and they much prefer Star Wars The Clone Wars. And of course, Star Wars Resistance was pretty much a flop, ended way before it was supposed to, and didn't really resonate with audiences. However, I don't have to tell you that The Mandalorian Season 1 was a massive success for Disney and for Star Wars. It actually might be the biggest win that Disney Star Wars got in its whole entire first wave of content. And we know that Mando Season 2 looks to be very ambitious, bigger in a lot of different ways, and it will introduce a lot of cameos for different characters that will then show up in spin-off series. We've been talking about this at great length. There's a ton of rumors about live action appearances and shows that are all going to tie together, creating something like the MCU over on Disney+. I'm personally calling this thing the Filoni-verse, and there are reports that yes, indeed, Dave Filoni has been put in charge of this shared universe of live action television, and of course, some of the animated stuff that will also tie into it. Here's a list of the different shows rumored to be being developed over at Lucasfilm. We've got the Boba Fett show, we've got a live-action Ahsoka show, we've got an animated Rebels sequel show, we've got an animated Clone Wars show that seems to be focusing on the Bad Batch, and for the record, yes, I have heard about this. I did talk to Kessel Run Transmissions, Noah and Corey about this as well, and yeah, it looks good to me. I've heard some sources say it's happening, so I'm going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt. Yes, a Clone Wars type show that's focusing on the different clones is coming out as well. We've also got the Ezra Bridger and Thrawn show, and another show that's rumored to be tying into all of these different things, and we don't know what or who the main character is going to be of that show. And all of those shows are said to be working together in sort of a Game of Thrones or Marvel Cinematic Universe type way, telling one big story over time. It's mind-blowing. It's very exciting. And I should also mention that the Obi-Wan series is still on, and so is the Cassian Andor show. These two shows might have some connective tissue to the rest of the Filoni-verse, but I don't expect them to have a lot of connective tissue because they were developed before all of that other stuff was developed, and maybe we'll get some cameos, but mostly they'll be separate stories. I think one of the biggest signals from Lucasfilm that the television arena is going to be way better than it was before is the fact that they're elevating Filoni. Resistance itself, although originally developed with the help of Filoni, really didn't have a lot of involvement from him. He backed off and was working on other things. And a lot of people think that hurt the show. It really did, and that's a big part of why it didn't resonate with Star Wars fans. So by correcting that and by making things more connected and actually putting Filoni in charge of all of those different properties and tying them all together, perfect move. The future of television for Star Wars is looking amazing. It might actually be the thing I'm most hyped for and most excited for. It's crazy, but yeah, man, the Filoniverse is going to be dope. Now, let's next talk about the video games. So let's start by talking about the Battlefront games. Battlefront 1, huge disappointment, made all kinds of negative headlines, and Battlefront 2 similarly created a bunch of bad PR for EA, Star Wars, and Lucasfilm. Both of the games had really predatory monetization practices with their loot box. Both of the games had a serious lack of content in their original renditions, and we now know this was due to EA and Lucasfilm really being like, get these games out in time for these movies, and the crunch in video game development culture is a totally real thing, and it just made for bad products. However, Battlefront 2 made a super crazy turnaround and started adding a bunch of awesome content to the point where now the game is completely worth not only the $30 half price that you can usually pay for it, but in a lot of ways it actually warrants a full $60 price tag nowadays. It has so many more features, so much more customization stuff. It's really cool. It was awesome to see that game make the turnaround that it did. Jedi Fallen Order also came out and was a smash success. People absolutely love that game. They love the story, and they can't wait to see that story continue. And it is going to have a sequel. In fact, it might have more than one sequel. EA announced that yes, the Jedi games are now a series of games that they will be developing. Even Star Wars Squadron looks really cool, and coming in at that $40 price tag with no microtransactions and a bunch of content on day one just really seems like EA has quite frankly learned the lesson, perhaps from some pressure from Disney as well, but they've learned the lesson and they seem to be actually making games that are priced correctly and are super enjoyable for Star Wars fans. Now, the other side of this that's really crazy is EA and Lucasfilm have been shutting down many games, man. I've lost track at this point, but they've axed a lot of Star Wars games, and what's crazy is ever since 2014, we've literally only had 3 major Star Wars games in all that time. We had the 2 Battlefront games and then Fallen Order. That's it. And just last week, EA CEO Andrew Wilson talked about doubling down on Star Wars content. EA has literally publicly made statements about how they are doubling down on Star Wars games, and they're going to be developing a lot more in the coming future. So the 2 major problems with Star Wars games, basically the frequency or lack thereof, and the quality control and the predatory monetization practices have all been addressed. The future for Star Wars games looks incredibly bright. And now let's talk about the movies. I probably don't have to tell you this, but the movies for many Star Wars fans is actually where Lucasfilm ultimately failed and where the most problems came for the Star Wars brand ever since the Disney takeover. Even people like myself, who have been majoritarily positive on the Disney era Star Wars films, can totally look back and now say, yeah, they screwed up in a lot of different ways. They really should have had a plan, and there's a lot of stuff they probably shouldn't have done. They should have reined certain creators in and been more MCU-like with their canon. It would have really helped. But we can't go back in time. Despite what some people are spreading around there on the internet, Lucasfilm has zero intention of retconning the sequel trilogy. And although it's not necessarily worth going into all the little problems with the Star Wars movies over the past couple of years, I'm here to tell you that I know for certain that Lucasfilm has heard the feedback, that they are making changes, and that the future movies are likely to be much better than what we have gotten thus far. I think the biggest piece of evidence for this is the actual step back or break in movies in general. Now, I think it's important to note here, this was not something Bob Iger and Disney wanted. This was Kathy coming to Bob Iger and saying, we need time. We need to put things in order. We need to really take our time to develop whatever the future of Star Wars movies is, so we need some time. Bob Iger reluctantly agreed, and now they have time to solidly figure out what is the plan for the films moving forward. And I did reach out to some sources at Lucasfilm, and they did make me aware that Lucasfilm is understanding of what the problems were with the sequel trilogy and how to fix them. Now, I, like many other Star Wars fans, have heard and believe that Kathleen Kennedy will step down next year in 2021. Now, for a lot of fans, that's going to be something they cheer on. They really don't like Kathy. They don't like what she's done to Star Wars. And so her leaving will alleviate that for a lot of different people. But the other side of this rumor is also going to help for everyone. And that is that Jon Favreau was selected by Kathy and will be playing a major role in the creative development content of the films from here on out for Lucasfilm. And I'd venture to say most fans, even the fans that really like Kathleen Kennedy and sort of hate the narrative of how she ruined everything, even those fans will be able to admit that it's much better for Star Wars if Jon Favreau is in charge of how they're making these movies and what they are making these movies about. He just seems to get it. We all love The Mandalorian, okay? And at this point, between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, it seems like Lucasfilm did everything they could to piss off every single kind of Star Wars fan that is out there. Jon gets it, and he will make movies that will be more enjoyable by a wider group of Star Wars fans. I think that's pretty undeniable. In fact, here is a quote from Jon Favreau from about a week ago when he was talking about the relationship between the content creators of Star Wars and the fan. He says here, "You have to listen. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street," he explained. "You have to feel the energy of the audience. But when you come from comedy, and when I was doing improv back in Chicago, that's it. You have to read the room. You have to feel the room. You have to be in community with the audience. You have to be part of it. You put something out in the world and then it echoes back at you." And that is a really small statement that carries an enormous amount of weight for a lot of different Star Wars fans. There's a lot of Star Wars fans that literally just feel like Lucasfilm doesn't actually care about what they want from Star Wars. They're too focused on maybe an agenda. They're too focused on maybe pleasing a certain other group of fans. They're not actually giving all the different kinds of Star Wars fans toys to enjoy. This is something I talk about with the MCU and Kevin Feige. I think one of the things that Feige does that's so brilliant is he can give toys to all the different kinds of fans. You know, fans that really care about representation and progressivism, they get some toys. Fans that just really care about some awesome dudes just beating the hell out of people and being superhero fans, he gives them some toys. He gives all of the different fans and literally hits all four quadrants with the content they create over at Marvel. Jon is going to create content or curate the content that is created in a way that it will satisfy more Star Wars fans, and that is a win for all Star Wars fans. I'm a big believer in the philosophy that winning solves everything. All Star Wars needs to do is start making some awesome Star Wars content that resonates with a bunch of different fans, and then all of the little problems and gripes that people have with Lucasfilm and Star Wars won't be unified by a narrative that says Star Wars is screwing up. Once that happens, a lot of these problems will actually fall away, and I am very excited and optimistic for the future of Star Wars content when it comes to movies, video games, and television. And so that's my take. Feel free to let me know why I'm wrong in the comments section below. And now let's shout out Kid from 21 Jump Street, and not for answering a nerd card question, but for being one of the many people that pointed out to us the audio error we had in a previous video. We didn't catch that error in time. The video already had accumulated a lot of views, and so we needed to leave it up, but I totally understand what you're saying. We will do better. So shout out to you, a kid from 21 Jump Street. We will do better. Thank you for the feedback. And now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know, who is the composer that came up with the sound for The Mandalorian? That's right, who created the dope soundtrack for The Mandalorian? Answer that question in the comments section below. And guys, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and I also want to let you know we are ending our Patreon as it currently exists, and instead we are focusing on channel memberships over on our live streaming channel, where we live stream all the time. If you like the content over here or you like the streams over there and you want to support us, go over to the live streaming channel and check out our memberships, which literally go live tomorrow, Monday, June 29th. And if you're watching this after that, they're live. Go check it out. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.